Joining us now, Democratic consultant and president of Sheinkopf Communications, Hank Sheinkopf, senior editor for The City and Moynihan Public Scholar at City College, Harry Siegel, and executive editor of The Nation, John Nichols. John and Hank, I believe you guys are going to disagree on a couple of things, so let us start with Harry. Harry, Kathy Hochul, the governor, endorses Mamdani. Why did she do it now? What took her so long?
Democrats, mainstream centrist Democrats, let's say, and Kathy Hochul's got to run for election next year. She had a tough time against Lee Zeldin 3 years ago. They're worried about Mamdani as a very useful foil for Trump. First off, politically, he's calling him my little commie, and he's punching at the guy and working out his nicknames and tweaking. Maybe as significantly for the governor, nearly 10% of New York's budget comes from the feds and a bigger share of the state budget. And the punishments and controls Donald Trump has right now, and he's talking openly, joking as he does, not joking, about taking away money, are very serious. And that, I think, was some part of her resistance. And the other part of her resistance was Mamdani has, talked about the police. He says he's going to apologize in the past as a racist and homophobic entity that's a threat to public safety. And as he began his career, staked out more radical positions that are not coming back to haunt him in his race, but that she does not want to be tied to. She did not want to be on the cover of the New York Post today, gussied up, photoshopped up as Che. As she is, but there she is. He won the Democratic primary. No one is catching up with him in the polls, and she decided it was time.
Does she worry about a competitor to the right of her? There was talk about Elise Stefanik maybe running against her. Does she worry about maybe less progressive elements of New York State coming back and threatening her from the right?
I think with her endorsement of Mamdani and maybe some political peace between them, she's less worried about her Lieutenant Governor Carlos Delgado running in the primary. I think Elise Stefanik is a significant threat to her politically. For New Yorkers, by the way, just across the state, the math of what Trump can do if there's a Republican governor who would let him. And Stefanik is very close with Trump, was going to be the UN ambassador, now is going to run, it appears, for governor. That the powers he has, not least with bringing in the National Guard, get way more significant, and the pressures on New York increase immensely. So there's a political threat to Hochul that's very real, and I think an imminent threat to New Yorkers they're going to have to consider if they want a governor and a president who can force New York City to conform or show common sense, or if they think, as I do, that would be a disturbing thing.
It's an interesting time in New York, Hank, because usually it's whoever wins the Democratic primary is a shoe-in to win the mayoral race. And this is the first time since I've been living here, 20 years, where it's not a real fight, because right now Cuomo is so far behind the polls, and so is Adams, and so is God, I'm blanking on his name. Sliwa, thank you. They're so far behind now. If they two of them dropped out, you might have more of a race here. But this is as divided as this city, I think, has ever been in my experience on the issue of the mayor. Why is there still so much concern from some parts of the city about Mamdani?
Well, look, the city is going through a significant demographic shift. It's much more Asian than not, much more Muslim than not, much less Jewish than not. It's just changing. And when you go through these traumatic elections, you tend to have a demographic shift behind it, number one. Number two, the affordability issue is real. There's no question about it. It's very expensive to live here. But the truth is, it's always been expensive to live here. The job picture is changing dramatically. I mean, the notion of how small storekeepers can function or not, the amount of empty space we have, whether New York City remains as the financial capital of the world is a real question. The growth of the Dallas-Fort Worth corridor is a real threat to us.
So why do you say that? Do you think that there are going to be businesses that flee this city if Mamdani wins?
Absolutely.
Are you sure?
Well, nobody's sure of anything. We predict everything. But the REITs have been pretty clear. There was a story in the Commercial Observer a few weeks ago about REITs and their potential lack of investment. There are people who are going to leave. Why? Because they can. Because there's no need to have to stay here anymore. You can do your business from a computer or a phone any place in the world, and you can certainly move to Florida, where the taxes don't exist in the same way, and lead a reasonable life if you want that.
John, what do you think of the as I asked Hank, the concern here in New York City among us, a not giant but significant enough portion of the population that they're just not ready for such a progressive mayor.
Well, these have been fights that we've seen in New York for a very long time. I mean, remember, this is not the first time New York has had an intense mayoral race where political party lines are shuffled and where you see, people, kind of lining up against their own nominee or favoring the nominee of another grouping. If you look back to the 1969 race for mayor of New York with John Lindsay, he was a Republican who was endorsed by Democrats like Shirley Chisholm. And so I think that this is one of the realities of New York politics. And I have immense respect for Hank because he's somebody I've followed as a political consultant and thinker for a very long time. And I think a lot of the analysis that he brings to this is wise. The city is changing. The demographics are changing. And also the economic dynamics are always in play. But one of the things that we have to put into the mix here is that Zohran Mamdani won that primary by focusing on an issue that New Yorkers care about passionately. And since he won the primary, he has been engaged in a level of outreach to grassroots Democratic clubs, to unions that backed Cuomo in the primary, and to many, many Democrats who did not support him in the primary, but have come to support him in the general election. That's the job of a candidate, right? You'll face a lot of criticism. You'll face a lot of misstatements and true statements and whatever comes at you. But at the end of the day, if you're running for mayor of a major city, really, I think the most dynamic city in the world, your job is to reach out across all sorts of lines and to build some level of support. What it looks like today is that Zohran Mamdani has done that. And the endorsement from Kathy Hochul is an incredibly significant signal that people who may have been resistant to him at one point are coming to see him as someone who could indeed be not just the mayor of New York, but a successful mayor of New York.
You also don't have Schumer yet. You don't have Jeffries yet, these big names. Let me play a soundbite from Senator Van Hollen talking about the divide within the Democratic Party. And, you can ask yourself who you think he's talking about.
Many Democratic members of the Senate and House representing New York have stayed on the sidelines. That kind of spineless politics is what people are sick of. They need to get behind him and get behind him now.
So, Hank, he's arguing the Democratic Party is not going to fix itself, that they have to start, as he said, being spineless and getting behind the masses of the party. And he believes that Mamdani has got the support of the masses of the party.
Okay. I've worked all over the United States, 44 states. I've worked for president. I've done all this. I've seen it. He's right, because the Democratic Party died a long time ago. And when you have a social movement, which is what Zohran Mamdani is about, not about governance, this is a social movement, not a political party that he's running, you need something to get into. Why? So that you can get on ballots around the country, because most of the states only allow two parties. They don't allow social democrats. He's not a Democrat. He's a social democrat. And they're going to take that dead carcass. They're going to ride it around the country. And we're going to see cities around the country taken over by Democratic socialists. Now, what would those policies mean? Zohran Mamdani can apologize until the moon stops turning that color or whatever it turns. Why? When you talk about cutting $1 billion off the top of the cops, when you talk about getting rid of school safety agents, when you talk about getting rid of specialized school examinations for the Asians, what that means is a great social revolution. How it will work out, odds are not good. The city was likely to go through a fiscal crisis. I work for municipal unions in the interest of disclosure. I can't wait.